Today, I want to share with you the story about a very special and important gift that I received many years ago, and the impact it had not only in my life, but in the lives of those around me too. Family, friends, and those that heard my story either in person or on my podcast. It might have an impact on your life too. This isn't a gift you might think someone would want or appreciate. In fact, most would probably see it as a tragedy, a burden. Heck, I know those with similar experiences to me who describe it as the worst thing that's happened to them. But as you'll come to realise, perspective is everything to me. It's what allows me to see opportunity where others might see only misfortune. This hasn't been an easy road at times, and I've definitely had my struggles along the way. Felt overwhelmed at times by the severity of the challenges I faced, and wondered to myself just how much more I can take. But I found my way through all that and more, thanks to the knowledge I've gained from what I've been through and continue to go through. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life, and nor am I saying that my path is the best or right one for everybody. I'm simply sharing what I've discovered from living with constant adversity for the past 28 years and how I've successfully managed that adversity and how I've used what I've discovered to help me in virtually every aspect of my life. Funnily enough, I was told from a young age by my teachers that I had a gift. Problem was, I had no idea what that gift was, and even if I did, I wouldn't have known what to do with it. Sure, I did well enough in school, but so did many others. I didn't see myself as anything special, and I really still don't. But in 1997, my journey toward understanding what made me think differently truly began. Not through academic success though, through something much harder, and ultimately far more rewarding and valuable. So, let's go back to 1997, October the 19th, just 9 days after my 22nd birthday. It was a warm spring Sunday afternoon in my home city of Christchurch in New Zealand. My girlfriend was away for the weekend, and I had some free time on my hands. Well, that would be the last time I could accurately use that saying. So, I decided to get my motorcycle, a Suzuki GSXR 750 sports bike, out for a quick ride up the local hills. I thought to myself, it'll be a quick 2-hour ride, and I'd be back home later that afternoon. It wasn't. In fact, it would be a couple of weeks before I'd see my home again, and it was just the beginning of a lifelong adventure. Instead of returning to my home that afternoon, I found myself in the back of an ambulance being rushed to hospital. I had lost control of my bike on the way back down the hill, a consequence of being young and dumb and thinking I was the fastest thing on 2 wheels, and I ended up crashing. I had no idea the extent of the injuries I'd done to myself at the time. A passerby who had stopped to help suggested I'd only broken my left arm. The only thing I could be certain of was that I was in a lot of pain, and when the paramedics arrived, they were quite concerned. I overheard them at one stage stating that I was in a bad way. As it turned out, my arm was fine. It wasn't broken. In fact, it suffered no damage at all. However, it wasn't working though. I go into greater detail about the accident and injury I received that day in my podcast, Screaming in Silence, but what I would be told a few days later in hospital was that I'd torn 5 main nerve trunks, C5 to T1, out of my spinal cord. This injury is known as a complete traumatic brachial plexus avulsion, resulting in a paralysed arm and a level of pain I never knew existed. At the time, there was nothing that could be done to save the arm, no surgery, no treatment. I was told that I'd never get the use of my arm back and that I would now live the rest of my life with severe chronic pain. Hearing this news wasn't devastating though. It wasn't a hard thing to accept. Despite being heavily sedated, I'd already come to understand that my arm wasn't working and that it was most likely permanent. And I most certainly knew about the crushing, burning, tearing, stabbing pain I was experiencing. Rather than being upset, I was relieved, because now I had the answers to the questions around how and why that had been running through my head for the past few days. With those answered, I could begin moving forward. This is the gift I received, the gift of inescapable adversity. My mother had commented to me in the days following the accident that she had feared that something like this would happen to me. My reply to that was, I was still alive, that I could still walk and talk, that I still had 3 working limbs, that had that accident not happened, maybe I could have been hit by a truck running a red light on my way home and been worse off. I was focusing, while lying in my hospital bed in incredible pain that averages 7 out of 10, with an arm that no longer worked, on what I still had, not what I'd lost. I was focusing on what I could control, not what I couldn't. I was present in the moment, not wishing that the accident never happened, nor fearing what the future held for me. This was about gratitude, not regret or grief. It was about accepting my situation, not resisting it. Without knowing it, I was practicing Stoicism. It came to me naturally. I was Stoic by nature. My doctors wanted me to remain in hospital for at least a month and not to return to work for 6 months. But I convinced them I'd be fine, and they allowed me to go home after 2 weeks, and I returned to work a week later. I wanted to get back to living my life. The accident to me wasn't a bad thing, a reason to give up. Neither was it a good thing. It was just something that happened. Getting back to my life was just the next natural step. Stoic. I would be called this countless times over the next 25 years of my life by people that had heard my story and seen me in action. I took it as meaning that I was positive and strong in the face of adversity. It seemed to fit me well, but I never dived deeper into what Stoicism really was. Fast forward to early 2023. By now, I'd been told numerous times that I needed to share my experiences and what I'd discovered with others. Many people had said to me that I'd inspired them and given them a new outlook, changed their life in a positive and meaningful way. For all this time, I always figured that how I handled this situation would be how anyone would. But now I finally began to realize that my approach to adversity was not the same as how most would react. By not sharing it, I wasn't making the most of this opportunity I'd received. I have always maintained that if I can help just one person through my experiences, then that makes my journey so much more worthwhile. Already, I had helped dozens, but now it was time to step that up. So I bought myself a microphone, started writing my experiences down, recorded a handful of episodes, and uploaded them to my first ever podcast series. I had no idea what to expect. I really had no expectations at all. I wasn't focused on the outcome, just the process of writing, recording, and uploading. I figured it wouldn't hurt to do it, and it may just help someone in need. And soon enough, the feedback began pouring in, from people with chronic pain and injuries to those just trying to cope with life in general. Some of the people who contacted me told me that they had heard my story at a time in their life that they most needed to hear it. My story had resonated far wider than I ever expected. For the 18th episode of the podcast, I decided to focus on that label I had been given so many times over the past 2 and a bit decades, that of being stoic. I knew nothing of the philosophy. Heck, I didn't even know it was a philosophy. Sitting at my computer, I began researching exactly what it meant, and what I learned struck me in a way I will never forget. For all this time, I have never found a school of thought that resonated with me. Certainly, I had found quotes here and there that, I felt aligned with, but no collective philosophy. Words from Stoic greats like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus hit me harder than I can describe. It felt like coming home to a place I never knew existed. Their lessons weren't new to me. I'd lived them already, instinctively. I didn't go looking for Stoicism to help me. Our paths were simply aligned. But now I could finally name what had been guiding me all along. I had to know more, so I immediately purchased a copy of the Gregory Hayes translation of Meditations, Marcus Aurelius' personal journal, reading it cover to cover 3 times in the first week. In the words that I read, I saw my own beliefs, my own actions and thoughts reflected back at me, clearer than ever. While my introduction to this philosophy came late, the concepts I read about from these Stoic figures were nothing new, but to see them all contained in one school of thought was powerful. It was, in a way, validation of the way I had chosen to respond to what had happened to me and how I choose to live my life in general. From quotes on enduring chronic pain, how to preserve our character in testing times, understanding where good and bad really exist and what is truly ours to control, and how every circumstance provides us with opportunity. These and so many others resonated stronger with me than anything I'd heard before. Nothing I read struck me as ridiculous or at odds with how I felt. There is one entry that really stood out to me from Meditations, which I've now read at least a half dozen times. Again, from the Gregory Hayes translation, Marcus writes to himself. After all, this was his personal journal, writings for his own guidance. It's unfortunate that this has happened. No, it's fortunate that this has happened, and I've remained unharmed by it, not shattered by the present or frightened by the future. It could have happened to anyone, but not everyone could have remained unharmed by it. This entry later ends with the words, "So remember this principle when something threatens to cause you pain. The thing itself was no misfortune at all. To endure it and prevail is great good fortune." To read this was like I was reading my own philosophy on not only living but thriving with chronic pain and partial paralysis. I had never considered it unfortunate that this happened to me. I've never pitied myself nor expected pity. I do consider it very fortunate that I possess the ability to remain unharmed by it. Look, for sure the pain is very intense and it certainly can hurt, but there is a stark difference between hurt and harm, and my injury has never harmed me, nor have I chosen to be harmed by it. And it most definitely is great good fortune to be able to not only endure this, but also prevail. I see myself as one of the luckiest people in the world, not despite my adversity, but because of it. I'm thankful for my experiences and would not change a thing about my path. I'd begun my first podcast episode with those very words, that I see myself as one of the luckiest people alive and that I'm thankful for my journey. So strongly do I feel this way that I decided to use them as part of the opening statement for every episode of my podcast because they are the basis of my outlook, my perspective, and, as I would find out in time, my shared philosophy with Stoicism. That's why this channel is called Stoic by Nature, because even before I knew what Stoicism was, I was living it already. Something else Marcus wrote to himself would cement this as an apt title for this channel. What is done to me is ordained by nature, what I do by my own. And to add to that, keep all that in mind and don't treat anything as important except doing what your nature demands and accepting what nature sends you. In the eyes of the Stoics, what happens to us in life is ordained by nature. It was intended to happen. And to live a peaceful and tranquil life, we must conform with what nature delivers to us through the decisions we make. Not only have I accepted what has come my way, I've chosen to embrace it, for many reasons. The lessons it has taught me, the opportunities and experiences I've had, the people that have come into my life. My 3 children were all born after my accident. Had that day not happened the way it did, my life would have taken another path, one on which I know they wouldn't have been born. I've been asked many times whether I would change what happened that day if I could, or if I regret it. My answer is always a firm no. Yeah, look, this might not be the life I envisioned for myself, I don't think anyone would, but it's turned out to be a life that I love. There is no undoing what happened. Even if there was, I wouldn't take it. Doing so would undo all the great things that have happened to me. I don't regret that day nor the accident. I celebrate it. I want it. I choose this path. We can argue about the existence of fate and whether things are ordained for us or not all day long. It's mostly irrelevant. What I know is this path that I'm on, one full of challenges and constant tests, feels right for me. It feels like this is where I should be, what I should face. It feels natural. It's a circumstance that has provided me with opportunity, one that combined with the teachings of Stoicism and my own perspective truly is a gift. The lessons from this gift are not only for me though, but for everyone who can learn from them. Those who need a new perspective, who need to know they're not alone, that no matter what we face in life, it is up to us what we do of it. While I might be stoic by nature, it takes focus and effort to apply it to everywhere in life, but the rewards are worth it. These rewards include taking back control of our lives, no longer being a puppet jerked around by things outside our control. The more often we practice these techniques we find within Stoicism, the more natural they become. And after nearly 30 years of daily practice, I'm in one of the best positions to be able to share with you these benefits. My life is truly a blessed one. This adversity is by far not the worst a human has experienced. I'm not anyone special. I'm not a scholar of philosophy. I'm just an everyday type of person who became an everyday stoic. I think it would be fair to say that we all want to improve our quality of life, to reduce or even eliminate feelings of frustration, to take back control and find more peace and tranquility in a world that seems to be becoming louder and more intrusive. And we all experience hardship and struggle at times, from physical and emotional pain, stress, financial and relationship challenges, feelings of anger, helplessness, resentment, and a lack of power in our own lives. None of us go through this life scar-free. I've got my scars and I'm sure you do too, whether they are physical or emotional. I know through my own experiences with chronic pain and physical injury and all that comes along with this, that there is a way that we can turn what holds us back and blocks us into what moves us forward. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. I'm walking, talking, living proof of this. I live this philosophy. I am an everyday stoic, not because I choose to, but because it is my nature. It's who I am. There are, of course, numerous examples of great people in history who by their actions have led stoic lives and have inspired many. From world leaders, explorers, humanitarians, we can find their stories retold in books and on the internet with ease, and I encourage you to do so. We will dip into their stories on occasion here too, but this channel will be mostly based around what I've discovered and how Stoicism has helped guide me not only with continual pain, but in day-to-day events that we all get challenged by. As I said, I do see myself as one of the luckiest people alive for the experience I've had. It has given me so much and continues to. I've turned adversity into a great thing for me and for those around me. It took me being put into a position where I was stripped of what I thought I controlled to learn what actually is in my control and how I can use that knowledge to vastly improve my quality of life. Let me share with you the techniques that I have discovered through my unique experiences that have enabled me to rise above struggle and overcome hardships and take back control. If this sounds like something you want to be a part of, then come join me on this journey. It won't cost you anything more than a little time, but you may just get the greatest reward imaginable: true freedom and peace.